I have been sharing this apartment with my roommate Tyler for a little over a year now, and honestly, it was working out pretty well at first. We split all the bills right down the middle, 50-50 on everything: rent, electric, internet, you name it. It felt fair, you know? Then Tyler's girlfriend Madison came into the picture. At first, she was just staying over on weekends, which was totally fine. I mean, I get it, people have relationships. But then those weekend visits turned into 3 nights a week, and then 5 nights. And before I even realized what was happening, Madison had basically moved in completely. She was here every single night, using our shower, cooking in our kitchen, running the air conditioning all day because she works from home, doing some kind of remote customer service job. I started noticing our utility bills creeping up. Like the electric bill went from $80 a month to $140. That is almost double, right? I did the math and realized I was basically paying for a third person to live here. But Tyler and I were still splitting everything 50-50. It was not fair at all. I tried dropping hints at first. I would mention how high the electric bill was getting, or I would joke about how we were going through groceries so fast now. But Tyler just brushed me off every single time. He would laugh and change the subject, or say something like, "Oh yeah, we have been home more lately." The thing is, I could barely afford my half of the rent as it was. I work at this marketing company, making okay money, but not great money. Between student loans and my car payment and everything else, I was already living paycheck to paycheck. Adding another $40 or $60 a month to my bills was actually a big deal for me. I felt like a guest in my own apartment. Madison rearranged our kitchen cabinets without asking me. She started keeping her toiletries in the bathroom we shared. Her shoes were by the front door. Her jackets were on our coat rack. It was like she had just claimed half the apartment as hers without anyone actually discussing it with me. After 3 solid months of this, I finally decided I had to say something real. Not hints, not jokes, an actual serious conversation. I pulled together all our utility bills from the past few months and highlighted the increases with a yellow marker. I made notes about the percentage jumps. I wanted to have facts, not just feelings, when I talked to Tyler. I waited until Madison went to her yoga class one evening. I sat Tyler down at our kitchen table and laid all the bills out in front of him. My heart was pounding because I hate confrontation, but I forced myself to be direct. "Look, Tyler, I really need to talk to you about Madison living here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She has been here every single day for 3 months now. Our bills have gone up a lot, and I am still paying half of everything, even though there are 3 people living here now." Tyler actually looked guilty for a second. His face kind of fell, and he nodded slowly. "You are right," he said. "I did not really think about how much this was affecting you. That's not fair to you." I felt this huge wave of relief wash over me. Finally, he was hearing me. "She needs to either start paying a third of all the bills," I said, continuing, "or she needs to stay at her own place more often. I can't keep subsidizing her living here for free." Tyler rubbed his face with his hands and let out this long breath. "Yeah, I totally get it," he said. "Let me talk to her this weekend. We'll figure something out. Maybe she can start contributing some money, or maybe she needs to be at her place more nights. I really appreciate you being cool about bringing this up." I went to bed that night feeling like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. We handled it like adults. We had a mature conversation. Everything was going to be okay. Over the next few days, I noticed Madison wasn't around as much. She came by maybe 2 or 3 nights instead of being there literally every night. The apartment felt more like mine again. I could breathe a little easier. Tyler even sent me a text message in the middle of the week that said, "Had a really good talk with Madison. We're working on a plan. Thanks for being patient with us. I really appreciate it, Rumi." Then that month, Tyler Venmo'd me his half of the utilities right on time. He even added an extra $20 without me asking for it, like some kind of peace offering. I stared at my phone thinking, thank God, we actually worked this out like reasonable people. For about a week and a half, everything felt normal again. The apartment was quiet, the bills were manageable. I thought we had moved past the whole situation. But I should have known better. I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, I realized Tyler was just buying time while they planned something way worse. It was a Thursday evening when everything exploded. I got home from work around 6 o'clock, feeling tired but okay. When I walked through the front door, Tyler and Madison were sitting at our kitchen table with these super serious expressions on their faces. But that wasn't even the weird part. There was a third person sitting with them, some man in a full business suit with a briefcase open on the table and papers spread everywhere. My stomach dropped immediately. Before anyone even said a word, I knew something bad was about to happen. You know that feeling when you just know? That was it. Tyler's face was completely different from the friendly roommate I had talked to the week before. He looked cold and distant. His eyes were hard. "This is our attorney, Marcus," Tyler said in this flat, emotionless voice. "We need to discuss some legal matters with you." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed to say. My voice came out all high and shaky. "Attorney? What's going on? I thought we worked everything out." Marcus adjusted his glasses and looked at me like I was some kind of problem he needed to solve. His voice was formal and completely detached. "I will get straight to the point," he said. "Madison has been residing at this address for 60 days, which establishes legal tenancy in this state. She has full tenant rights under state law." "But she doesn't even pay rent," I said. I could hear my own voice getting higher and more desperate. "She's not on the lease." "Payment is not required for tenancy establishment. Duration of stay is what matters legally. Once someone has lived somewhere continuously for 60 days, they are considered a legal tenant with all associated rights." He slid this stack of papers across the table toward me. When I looked down, I saw my own text messages printed out and highlighted in bright yellow. The conversation where I told Tyler that Madison needed to pay rent or leave, other messages where I had complained about her being there all the time, messages that I had sent in frustration taken completely out of context. "We have documentation of your repeated harassment of our client," Marcus said, his voice cold as ice. "You have been demanding that she leave the premises, creating a hostile living environment for a legal tenant. These confrontational conversations constitute harassment under tenant protection laws." Harassment? My hands started shaking badly. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "I was just asking for things to be fair. I'm paying half of everything while she lives here completely free. You were demanding a legal tenant vacate without proper cause," Marcus said. "That constitutes harassment." He pushed this official-looking document toward me. It had a gold seal stamped at the top and a bunch of legal language I could barely read because my eyes were blurring with tears. "You have 30 days to vacate these premises voluntarily," Marcus announced. "If you refuse, we will file for formal eviction through the courts." I couldn't breathe. Eviction? I'm the one on the lease. I pay my rent on time every single month. "This is my home," I said, and my voice cracked with emotion. Tyler's voice came out ice cold. "I am the primary leaseholder," he said. "My name is first on the lease. I have full authority to make decisions about who lives here." "But we agreed to split everything," I said. Tears were starting to blur my vision. "You said we would figure this out together." Tyler shrugged like my entire life didn't matter at all. "I said I would handle it," he replied, "and I'm handling it." Marcus started packing up his briefcase. "You have 30 days, he repeated. "I strongly suggest you use that time to find alternative housing. An eviction on your record will make it impossible to rent anywhere else in the future." They all stood up and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me sitting there alone with that document in front of me. 30 days to leave my own apartment. The apartment I had been living in for over a year. The apartment I paid my rent faithfully every single month. I barely slept that night. I sat on my bed with my laptop open, typing things like roommate eviction laws and primary leaseholder rights into Google until my eyes burned and my head pounded. I clicked through page after page of legal websites, but nothing seemed to address exactly what was happening to me. Everything talked about landlords evicting tenants or tenants suing landlords, but nothing about roommates trying to kick out other roommates. The reality kept hitting me in waves. I might actually be homeless in 30 days. I had nowhere to go. My savings account had maybe $800 in it. First month rent and security deposit anywhere else would cost at least $3,000, probably more. I didn't have that kind of money. Around 2 in the morning, I found this tenant rights forum buried deep in the search results. Someone had posted about a roommate dispute from like 3 years ago. I scrolled through all the responses, getting more and more discouraged until one comment made me stop breathing. A user named Tenant Advocate 2019 wrote, "Most lease modifications require all parties' signatures, not just the primary leaseholder. Check your specific lease language carefully." I screenshotted that comment immediately. My heart was pounding, I could hear it in my ears. I read the comment again and again. Maybe Tyler didn't have the power he claimed. Maybe Marcus was lying about everything. I screenshotted the entire forum thread and saved it in 3 different places on my phone and computer. It was the first tiny spark of hope I had felt since Marcus dropped those papers on the table. I spent another hour searching for information about dual signatures. The next day, I took a long lunch break and drove to Robert's office downtown. It was in this really nice building with marble floors that made me feel completely out of place. The waiting room had expensive-looking furniture and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal books. Robert was probably in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He shook my hand firmly and gestured for me to sit down across from his big wooden desk. I handed him the folder with everything I had gathered, my copy of the lease, all the utility bills from the past 6 months, bank statements showing my rent payments, the papers Marcus gave me, screenshots of my text conversations with Tyler. My hands were shaking as I passed it all over. Robert spread everything across his desk methodically. He read through my lease first, then the utility bills, then Marcus's eviction notice. I sat there sweating through my shirt while he reviewed everything. My entire future was hanging on whatever he was about to tell me. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 10 minutes, Robert's expression changed. He looked up at me and I saw something like relief in his eyes. He tapped the lease with his finger. "Your roommate cannot evict you unilaterally," he said clearly. "This lease requires both primary and secondary tenant signatures for any modifications or terminations. Tyler would need your agreement or a court order based on legitimate cause to remove you." I almost started crying right there in his office. The relief was so intense I felt dizzy and lightheaded. But then Robert kept talking and explained the bad news. Even though I had a strong case, I needed to file a formal response to prevent Tyler from pursuing eviction through the courts. His retainer fee was $5,000 up front. I felt my face fall before I could stop it. $5,000 might as well have been $50,000 given my current financial situation. I had $800 to my name. Robert saw my reaction and his voice got gentler. "You could try filing the paperwork yourself," he suggested, "but I have to warn you that one mistake could cost you everything. Courts are very particular about formatting, deadlines, and legal language. One missed deadline or incorrect form, and you could lose by default." I left his office with a stack of forms and instructions. I felt simultaneously hopeful and terrified. I had legal standing to fight this, but I was going up against Tyler and Madison, who apparently had unlimited access to legal help through Marcus. I spent my entire lunch break the next day sitting in my car in the work parking lot, filling out court forms. The legal terminology might as well have been another language. Words like affirmative defense and motion to dismiss and verified complaint swam in front of my eyes. I had to Google half the terms just to understand what I was supposed to write. 3 days after the attorney ambush, I came home from work around 6 o'clock. I pulled out my phone to look something up and tried to connect to our apartment Wi-Fi. The password did not work. I tried it 3 more times, thinking I must have typed it wrong. Then I realized what had happened. I found Tyler in the kitchen scrolling through his phone. "Hey, did you change the Wi-Fi password?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He barely looked up. "Yeah," he said with a shrug. "You are not a permanent resident anymore, so you are not entitled to household amenities." The cruelty was so casual it took my breath away. "I need internet to file my legal paperwork and research my case," I said. "This is deliberate sabotage." Tyler just walked away without responding. I grabbed my laptop and all my documents and drove to the public library. It was open until 8. The librarian at the front desk, this sweet older woman with gray hair, saw me looking completely lost and asked if I needed help. I explained that I needed to file court documents online. She was incredibly kind and patient. She helped me scan all my documents and showed me how to use the court's online filing portal. The website was confusing and poorly designed, but she walked me through each step like she had done this 100 times before. When I finally hit the submit button, I felt like I at least done something instead of just waiting to be thrown out of my home. My phone buzzed a few minutes later with an email from the court clerk confirming my filing. A hearing date would be set within 30 days. At least I was fighting back now. But the next morning at work, everything got so much worse. My supervisor, Jennifer, called me into her office. There was someone from Human Resources sitting there already, this stern-looking woman named Patricia. My stomach dropped immediately before anyone even spoke. Jennifer's face was completely neutral as she slid a folder across the desk toward me. "A complaint has been filed against you," she said in this formal tone, "for stalking and harassing a former tenant of your building. There is evidence of threatening messages and unwanted contact. We are terminating you immediately for violating company conduct policies." I felt the floor had disappeared beneath me. "What are you talking about?" I said. "There must be a mistake. I have not stalked or harassed anyone." Jennifer held up her hand to stop me from talking. She opened the folder and I saw printed screenshots of text messages. My number was at the top of each one. The messages said things like, "You will pay for this," and "I am not letting this go," and "You think you can just take what is mine?" My hands started shaking badly as I looked at them. "I never sent these messages," I said desperately. "Someone faked these somehow. This is not real." Patricia from HR asked in this cold voice, "Do you recognize this phone number?" "Yes, that is my number, but I did not send these messages," I insisted. "Someone must have faked them or edited screenshots or something. I would never threaten anyone like this." Jennifer's face showed clearly that she did not believe me. The company takes harassment very seriously. We cannot risk keeping an employee who stalks and threatens people. This is a liability issue. I tried to think straight, but my brain felt fuzzy and slow. "Who even filed this complaint?" I asked. "We cannot share that information due to privacy concerns," Jennifer replied. Patricia started talking about my final paycheck and returning my building access card and laptop. Everything was moving way too fast. I couldn't process what was happening. Security showed up at the door within 5 minutes. This guard, named Dave, who I'd seen around for 2 years, walked me back to my desk while everyone in the office stared. I grabbed my coffee mug, a framed photo of me and my college friends, some pens. Everything fit in one small cardboard box. My coworker Emily watched from across the room but didn't say anything. Nobody said anything. The walk through the office felt like it took forever. Everyone knew what was happening when security escorted someone out. I sat in my car in the parking lot holding the box on my lap. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stared at the office building for maybe 20 minutes, just trying to process what had happened. Then it clicked. Madison. This had to be Madison's doing. She must have faked those screenshots somehow, made it look like the messages came from my number. She reported me to my company, claiming to be the stalking victim. They weren't just trying to evict me anymore. They were destroying my entire life, my income, my job history, my professional reputation, everything. I started the car, but I didn't know where to go. I couldn't face going back to the apartment. I just drove around aimlessly for an hour, my mind spinning. That evening, I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop because I still couldn't face going home. I pulled out my phone and called my parents. My dad, Kevin, answered on the third ring. I tried to explain everything, the eviction threat, the fake attorney Marcus, now losing my job over completely made-up stalking accusations. My voice kept cracking as I talked. I told them about the fabricated text messages and how Madison must have created them to get me fired. I was expecting my dad to be shocked or concerned or at least sympathetic. I was barely holding it together while I explained the whole nightmare. There was this long, uncomfortable pause after I finished talking. Then my dad sighed really heavily and said something that made my stomach drop. "Sweetie, we've been talking to Tyler," he said carefully. I felt cold all over. "What do you mean you've been talking to Tyler?" I asked. My dad explained that Tyler had called them a few days ago. He presented himself as the reasonable one trying to handle a difficult roommate situation. Tyler told my parents that I had been harassing Madison, refusing to accept that she lives at the apartment now, making everyone uncomfortable with my aggressive behavior. Tyler seemed very concerned about the whole situation, actually, my dad said. I tried to interrupt, but my dad kept talking. He said Tyler explained how he had tried to work things out with me, but I kept escalating and making threats. My mom got on the phone. Her voice had this disappointed tone that cut right through me. "Honey, we raised you better than to make a woman feel unsafe in her own home," she said. "You need to accept that living situations change and people move in together. That's just part of being an adult." "But Madison doesn't pay any rent. The whole eviction setup is a setup. Marcus isn't even a real attorney. They're lying about everything." My mom cut me off before I could finish. "Tyler showed us the messages you sent threatening him and Madison," she said firmly. "We are not going to support this kind of behavior. You need to get yourself together." I realized with absolute horror that Tyler had sent my parents the same fake screenshots that Madison used to get me fired. My own family thought I was the bad guy here. They believed I was some kind of unstable person harassing this poor couple. My dad got back on the phone. "We will not be providing any financial help until you get your priorities straight." And the next week became pure survival mode. I filed for unemployment online, but the website said it takes weeks to process claims. The form asked why I left my last job, and I had to check the box for terminated. That probably meant I would get denied anyway, since it was not a layoff. I went to the grocery store and bought the cheapest food I could find: ramen noodles, peanut butter, white bread, generic cereal. I used my credit card because my checking account was almost empty. The card was already carrying a balance of $1,500, but I did not have a choice. I needed to eat. Back at the apartment, Tyler and Madison acted like I was completely invisible. They would sit on the couch watching TV and would not even glance at me when I walked through the room. It was like I was a ghost haunting my own home. I started going through all my stuff to see what I could sell. My gaming console that I had saved up for last year, my bike that I barely rode anymore, some old textbooks from college. I listed everything on Facebook Marketplace. A guy offered me $200 for the console, and I took it, even though I had paid $400 for it. I needed cash right now. Principles and fair prices did not matter anymore. My former coworker, Daniel, messaged me on Facebook. He had left the company last year to work somewhere else. He saw my posts selling stuff and asked if everything was okay. I just broke down and told him the whole story over Messenger. The eviction threat, losing my job, my parents cutting me off, all of it. I typed it all out through tears. Daniel did not question whether I was telling the truth. He just asked what I needed. He told me about a temp agency he worked with that placed people in short-term jobs. They paid daily and did not ask many questions about recent employment gaps. He sent me the contact information and told me to use his name as a reference. "They helped me out when I was between jobs," he wrote. "They're good people." I called them the next morning and they had me come in that same afternoon. The coordinator, this woman named Brenda, asked some basic questions and had me fill out paperwork. She said they could start placing me in assignments right away. "We have a warehouse shift starting tomorrow if you are interested," she said. "It's hard work, but it's money." "I will take it," I said immediately. I started working whatever temp jobs they sent me to. One day I was in a warehouse loading boxes onto trucks for 12 hours. The next day I was stocking shelves at a retail store during the overnight shift. Another day I was doing data entry in some random office building downtown. The work was exhausting and the pay was barely above minimum wage. I was making maybe $12 an hour when I used to make $22 at my real job. But it was cash flow when I had nothing else coming in. I worked 12-hour shifts whenever they were available. My body ached constantly. My back hurt, my feet hurt. I would come home to the apartment so tired I could barely stand, and Tyler and Madison would be having loud conversations in the living room about how nice it would be when the place was finally peaceful. They talked loud enough for me to hear through my bedroom door. It was deliberate. "I cannot wait to turn that second bedroom into an office," Madison said one night. "We can finally set up the space properly." They were already planning how to use my room once I was gone. It was like I was already dead to them. 2 weeks after losing my job, I came home from a warehouse shift completely exhausted. There was a man standing outside our apartment door. He looked official and was holding an envelope. "Are you Jessica?" he asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "You have been served," he said, handing me the envelope. Then he just walked away. I opened the envelope right there in the hallway. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unfold the papers. It was a restraining order petition from Tyler. The paperwork claimed that I had threatened violence against him and Madison. It listed the fake text messages as evidence, but then it added new stuff that I had never even done. It claimed I had been behaving erratically, making verbal threats inside the apartment, following Madison around. It said Tyler feared for his and Madison's safety. There was a court hearing scheduled in 1 week. A judge would decide whether to grant a temporary restraining order. I read through the papers 3 times, trying to understand the implications. If Tyler got this restraining order approved next week, I would be legally banned from my own apartment. I wouldn't be able to go home. I wouldn't be able to gather my things. I wouldn't be able to fight the eviction because I would be barred from the premises. This was his plan all along: create a legal crisis that forced me out before the eviction hearing, where I might actually have a chance to defend myself. I was standing in the hallway holding these papers, and I could hear Tyler and Madison talking and laughing inside the apartment. They knew exactly what they were doing. I stood there reading through the restraining order papers one more time, and something clicked in my brain about the timing. The eviction hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. If Tyler got this restraining order approved next week, I would not be allowed within 500 feet of the apartment. I wouldn't be able to gather my documents, meet with any lawyer, or even show up to contest the eviction. This was his plan all along: create a legal crisis that forced me out before the eviction hearing, where I might actually have a chance to defend myself. My credit card statement that month showed $8,247 in debt. The temp agency had paid me $96 the day before for an 8-hour warehouse shift. The math didn't work anymore. I was drowning. I walked down to my car because I couldn't go back inside that apartment right now. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled up Robert Chen's office number on my phone. Her secretary answered, and I asked if I could come in tomorrow morning. She checked the schedule. "Robert has 15 minutes at 9 a.m., she said. "I'll take it," I replied. The next morning, I was waiting outside Robert's office at 8:45. When he called me back, I sat across from his desk and laid out everything that had happened since our last meeting. I lost my job because of fake screenshots. My parents cut me off because they believed Tyler's lies. Now there was a restraining order hearing in 6 days. Robert listened without interrupting. When I finished, I leaned forward in my chair desperately. "I will pay in installments, whatever amount per month you need. I will sign over part of my wages once I get stable work again. I'll do payment plans, anything. Please help me." Robert closed the folder in front of him and shook his head slowly. He explained that my malpractice insurance will not allow me to take cases without the full retainer up front. It's firm policy, not my personal choice. But then he leaned back and gave me advice for free. He said, "Show up at the restraining order hearing with any evidence you can find that proves those text messages are fake, phone records, anything that contradicts their timeline. Judges take restraining orders seriously, but they also don't like being manipulated with false evidence." I thanked him and left feeling slightly less hopeless than when I arrived. I spent the rest of that day calling my phone carrier. The first customer service person transferred me to technical support. Technical support transferred me to the legal department. The legal department told me I needed to submit a written request. I submitted the written request through their website portal.
2 days later, I got an email saying they could provide a call and text log showing the numbers I contacted and the dates and times, but the actual message content required a subpoena from a court or law enforcement. I called back and explained that I needed to prove I didn't send certain messages. The representative sounded sympathetic, but said there was nothing they could do without a subpoena. "How do I get a subpoena?" I asked desperately. She explained, "You need a lawyer to request one from a judge." I did not have a lawyer. I could not afford a lawyer. I spent another entire day on the phone trying different approaches. I talked to 5 different representatives. I got transferred to supervisors twice. Everyone told me the same thing: message content needs a subpoena. I could get the basic log showing I sent texts to Tyler's number on certain dates, but I couldn't prove what those texts actually said. The screenshots Tyler had could show anything. My basic phone log wouldn't definitively prove they were fake. I printed out the log anyway because it was all I had. 3 days before the hearing, I was working an overnight stocking shift at a grocery store. I got off at 6 a.m. and drove back to the apartment complex. I sat in my car in the parking lot because I still couldn't deal with going inside yet. I pulled out all the documents I had been carrying around in a folder: the eviction notice, the restraining order petition, the utility bills I had originally gathered to show Tyler the cost increases, my phone records. Everything was spread across my passenger seat and dashboard. I picked up one of the utility bills and just stared at it, feeling defeated. Something looked off, but I couldn't figure out what. Then I saw it. The bill was addressed to Madison, but the address was not our apartment. It was a completely different street across town on the south side of the city. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my phone and typed the address into Google Maps. It was a real place, an apartment complex called Riverside Gardens. I looked through more papers scattered around my car. There was a credit card statement that must have gotten mixed in with my stuff somehow. It was also addressed to Madison at that same South Side address. My hands started shaking as I pulled up the county property records website on my phone. I typed in Madison's full name. The results showed her registered residence for tax purposes at the Riverside Gardens address, not our apartment, not the address where she supposedly had been living for 60 days and established legal tenancy. Marcus's whole legal argument about Madison being a legal tenant was based on a lie. She never lived at our apartment as her primary residence. She was just staying over while keeping her real apartment across town. I spent the entire rest of the day and night researching everything I could find about primary residence requirements for tenancy establishment.
I was still sitting in my car at noon, reading legal websites on my phone and taking notes. I drove to the public library and used their computers to print out relevant state statutes about tenant rights and primary residence definitions. By 3 a.m., I had a folder full of documentation, and I finally understood what had happened. Marcus was not just wrong about the law. He had deliberately lied, knowing that Madison maintained another residence the whole time. The hearing was at 9 a.m. I had not slept at all, but I felt more focused than I had in weeks. I put on the one decent shirt I owned that was not wrinkled. I drove to the courthouse and went through security. The courtroom was small, with maybe 20 seats. Tyler was already there, with a different man in a suit, not Marcus this time, a real attorney, apparently. I sat on the opposite side of the room. When the judge called our case, we both stood up. Tyler's attorney, this guy named Mr. Patterson, presented the fabricated text messages first. He showed the judge printed screenshots of me supposedly threatening Tyler and Madison. Then Tyler took the stand and testified about my threatening behavior and how scared he and Madison were. He was really good at looking sincere and worried. The judge listened carefully and took notes on a legal pad. When it was my turn, I walked up to the front with my folder. My voice shook at first, but I forced myself to speak clearly. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence that contradicts the claims being made," I said. My hands were trembling as I opened the folder. I presented the utility bill addressed to Madison at the different address. then the credit card statement, then the property records showing that address as her registered residence. The judge actually looked up from his notes with interest in his eyes. He leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Patterson," the judge said, "can you explain why Miss Madison has active utility and credit accounts at a different address if she has been living at the defendant's apartment for 3 months?" Mr. Patterson clearly was not expecting this. He shuffled through his papers and started talking about how Madison was transitioning between residences during that time period. "Excuse me, Your Honor," I interrupted politely. "The dates on these utility bills show that Madison was paying electricity, gas, and internet service at the other address during the exact same months that their attorney Marcus claimed she established tenancy at our apartment. You cannot establish tenancy somewhere while actively maintaining and paying for a completely different residence as your primary home." The judge looked at Mr. Patterson with a serious expression. "Do you have documentation proving that Miss Madison actually lived at the apartment in question as her primary residence during those 3 months?" he asked. Mr. Patterson admitted he did not have that documentation with him today. His face was turning red. The judge did not dismiss the restraining order petition completely, but he did not grant it either. He said he was continuing the hearing for 2 weeks and ordering both parties to provide additional documentation about Madison's actual residence during the relevant time period. "I want utility records, lease agreements, mail receipts, anything proving where she actually lived during this time," the judge said firmly. "We will reconvene in 2 weeks with that evidence." I walked out of that courthouse feeling real hope for the first time in weeks. My legs felt shaky but strong at the same time. I drove straight to the address on Madison's utility bill. Riverside Gardens was a decent apartment complex with a pool and a parking garage. I walked around until I found the building number from her mail. There was a mailbox directory in the lobby. Madison's name was clearly printed next to apartment 2847. I took photos of everything with my phone: the building exterior, the mailbox directory with her name on it, the apartment number on the door. I documented everything carefully. Then I waited outside near the parking garage. Around 6 p.m., a woman in her 50s came out walking a small dog. I approached her carefully. "Excuse me, do you live in this building?" I asked politely. "Yes, I have been here 5 years," she said. "Why do you ask?" I showed her a photo of Madison on my phone. "Do you know this woman?" The woman nodded immediately. "Oh yes, that is the girl in 2847 who works from home. She said, I see her coming and going all the time. She is very quiet." "Do you know anything else about her?" I asked. The woman thought for a moment. "She complained a few weeks ago about her boyfriend's annoying roommate who would not leave them alone, but she seemed nice enough." My stomach twisted, but I thanked her and took down her apartment number in case I needed a witness statement later. I spent the next 2 days going back to that complex at different times. I saw Madison's car in the parking garage twice. I photographed it with the apartment building visible in the background, making sure the date and timestamp showed clearly. I talked to 2 more neighbors who confirmed she lived there. One older man mentioned seeing her almost every single evening when he walked his dog. "She's there all the time," he said. "Works from home, I think. Always on her laptop on the balcony." On the 4th day, I went to the utility company offices in person. I filled out formal request forms for records showing Madison's account activity at the Riverside Gardens address. It cost $50 for expedited processing that I could barely afford with my already maxed-out credit card, but I paid it with my already maxed-out credit card. Within a week, I received thick envelopes from the electric company, gas company, and internet provider. Every single one showed Madison maintained active, paid accounts at Riverside Gardens throughout the entire 3 months when Tyler claimed she was establishing tenancy at our apartment. The bills showed regular usage patterns. Someone was definitely living there and using utilities the whole time.
She was paying for electricity, gas, and internet at her real apartment while supposedly living full-time at ours. I gathered every single piece of evidence I had collected over the past week and drove straight to Robert Chen's office. My hands were shaking as I carried the folder, now stuffed with utility bills, neighbor statements, photographs, and mail receipts. The secretary recognized me and waved me back without making me wait this time. Robert looked up from his desk as I walked in, probably expecting more bad news based on my expression. "I brought something big," I said, dropping the folder. He opened it and started going through the documents one by one. I watched his whole attitude change as he read. His eyes got wider. He kept making little sounds of surprise. He looked at the utility bills showing Madison's active accounts at Riverside Gardens during the exact months Marcus claimed she lived at our apartment. He studied the photographs of her name on the mailbox directory. He read through the neighbor statements confirming she lived there and worked from home at that address. Robert leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "This is not just a failed eviction attempt anymore," he said slowly. "This is fraud, serious fraud." He explained that Marcus had stood in my kitchen presenting himself as a lawyer when he had no license to practice law. He made false claims about Madison's tenant status. He used made-up evidence to threaten me with illegal removal from my home. "This could be criminal," Robert said, tapping the papers. "This goes way beyond a civil dispute now." Robert kept flipping through the documents and shaking his head in disbelief. He pointed out that Marcus had given me a business card claiming to be an attorney. He presented legal documents with official-looking seals. He made specific claims about tenant law that were completely, demonstrably wrong. "Pretending to be a lawyer is a serious crime in our state," Robert explained. "Add in the fraud aspect, the false evidence, the threats to illegally remove you from your home, and we're looking at potential criminal charges for all of them." He asked if I still had Marcus's business card. I pulled it out of my wallet, where I had been keeping it like some kind of terrible souvenir of the worst day of my life. Robert made a copy of it right there in his office using his scanner. Robert sat forward and his voice got really serious. He said, "We will take your case on a contingency basis. That means I get paid from whatever we win. You do not pay anything up front." I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. "Really?" I whispered. "Really," he confirmed. "We're not just fighting the eviction attempt anymore. We're going after Tyler, Madison, and Marcus for conspiracy, fraud, and Marcus for unauthorized practice of law. You have grounds for a substantial lawsuit against all three of them." Robert explained that first, we needed to report Marcus to the State Bar Association. They take unlicensed practice of law very seriously. He also thought we should file a police report because this crossed into criminal territory. "What happens next?" I asked, barely believing this was real. Robert started making a list on his legal pad. Emergency motion to dismiss the eviction case based on fraud. Formal complaint to the State Bar Association about Marcus with copies of everything. Police report about the threats and fake legal representation. Then we file our own lawsuit seeking damages. We're looking at tens of thousands in potential damages, lost wages, emotional distress, legal costs, and punitive damages for how egregious their conduct was. This was not just a mistake, this was a...
Catherine asked if I could come to her office downtown to give a formal statement. I took time off from my temp job and went to meet her the next day. Her office was small and plain, with filing cabinets lining every wall. She had me sit down and started asking very specific, detailed questions. Did Marcus explicitly say he was Tyler's attorney? Did he present documents that looked official? Did he make specific claims about the law? Did he threaten me with legal action? I answered yes to everything and explained exactly what had happened in chronological order. She took detailed notes and recorded our entire conversation with my permission. Catherine told me that pretending to be an attorney is a criminal offense, not just a professional violation. She was gathering evidence to refer the case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal prosecution. What Marcus did, using false legal authority to threaten and intimidate someone about their housing, is taken very seriously, she explained. Housing is a protected area under state law. You cannot use fraud and fake legal threats to force someone out of their home. She thanked me for coming forward and said the investigation would continue. She also mentioned that if criminal charges got filed, I might need to testify in court. I am absolutely willing to do that, I said firmly. 2 days after meeting with the bar investigator, my phone rang while I was stocking shelves at another warehouse job. It was Tyler. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. His voice sounded completely different from the cold, cruel tone he used during the fake lawyer setup. He was practically begging. "Jessica, hey, listen, I think there has been a big misunderstanding about all of this." He started talking fast. "Marcus got the legal situation wrong. I did not know Madison had not actually made your place her main home. Marcus told me that staying somewhere for 60 days automatically made you a legal tenant, and I just believed him." He kept rambling about how he wanted to work something out and avoid this situation getting out of hand. His voice actually shook when he talked. I barely said anything. I just let him keep talking and digging himself deeper. "Maybe we can figure out some kind of deal where you stay and Madison just stays at her place more often," Tyler suggested desperately. "We could split utilities 3 ways like you originally asked. I heard about the bar complaint and the investigation. Marcus is Madison's cousin. He promised he knew what he was doing, but I guess he did not. I feel like we were all kind of victims here." While Tyler kept talking and making excuses, I remembered something Robert had mentioned during one of our meetings. My state allows one-party consent for recording phone calls. That meant I could record a conversation without telling the other person. I quickly opened the voice recorder app on my phone and hit the record button while Tyler was still rambling. "So, Marcus is not actually a licensed attorney?" I asked casually, keeping my voice neutral. Tyler hesitated. "Well, no, he's not actually licensed yet," he admitted, "but he knows a lot about tenant law from helping his friends with disputes before. He's done this kind of thing successfully before." "And Madison kept her other apartment at Riverside Gardens the whole time she was supposedly living with us?" I asked. Another pause. "Yeah, she kept that place because her lease was not up yet," Tyler said. "But she was planning to move in with us eventually. It was just a transition period." "And the eviction threat was based on Marcus's legal advice?" I pressed. "Yeah, Marcus told us that staying somewhere for 60 days creates automatic tenant rights. He said since I'm the primary leaseholder, we could make you leave. He seemed really confident about it." Every answer Tyler gave was making things worse for him. He was admitting that Marcus was not a real lawyer. He was confirming Madison kept her other apartment. He was acknowledging that the whole eviction threat was based on Marcus's fake legal advice. He tried to claim he did not know the legal information was wrong, but he had just admitted he knew Marcus was not licensed and knew Madison lived somewhere else. His whole defense about being an innocent victim fell apart with his own words. I kept asking calm, simple questions and letting him talk. By the time the call ended, I had a 20-minute recording of Tyler admitting every key fact that destroyed his case. The next morning, I met Robert at his office and played him the entire recording. He listened with his eyes getting progressively wider. When it ended, he actually laughed out loud. "Tyler just handed us the entire case on a silver platter," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "This recording alone is worth more than any evidence we could have gathered through discovery." Robert made multiple copies of the audio file and added it to our evidence folder. Robert told me we had a meeting scheduled with a detective from the fraud division the next day. The bar investigator had referred my case to the police, and they assigned someone to look into it. We drove to the police station together.
The detective was a middle-aged guy named Detective Morrison, with gray hair and tired eyes, but he looked genuinely interested in the case. When we sat down in the interview room, Robert did most of the talking at first. He explained the whole situation from the beginning: the fake lawyer setup, the threats to evict me illegally, the fabricated evidence, the discovery that Madison never actually lived with us. Then he played the recording of Tyler's phone call. Detective Morrison listened very carefully and took detailed notes in a small notebook. When it finished, he asked for a copy of the recording. Robert handed over a USB drive with the audio file, plus all our other evidence: the utility bills from Madison's real apartment, Marcus's business card, the documents Marcus gave me, the neighbor statements, everything. Detective Morrison explained that this type of fraud, using false legal authority to threaten and coerce someone about their housing, is taken very seriously by his department. Housing is a protected area under state law. You cannot use fraud and fake legal threats to force someone out of their home. That crosses into criminal territory. He said he would review everything thoroughly and present it to the prosecution office. He couldn't promise what charges might get filed, but based on what he'd seen and heard, there was definitely enough evidence for a criminal investigation. "Are you willing to cooperate fully if this goes forward to prosecution?" he asked me directly. "Absolutely yes," I said without hesitation. "I want them held responsible for what they tried to do to me." The continued restraining order hearing happened the following week. I walked into the courthouse with Robert beside me, and I felt completely different from the first time I'd been there. Last time, I was alone and terrified with barely any evidence. This time, I had a real lawyer, a folder full of proof, and a recording that destroyed Tyler's entire story. Tyler showed up with yet another different lawyer this time, obviously not Marcus. His new attorney was a woman in an expensive-looking suit who appeared very unhappy to be there. The judge called the case, and Tyler's lawyer immediately stood up and asked to withdraw the restraining order request entirely. But the judge did not let her. "I want answers about what's been going on with this case," he said sternly. "The court has received notice about a bar association investigation and a criminal investigation related to the original eviction proceedings. I want to know what is happening before I dismiss anything." Robert stood up and asked permission to present evidence. The judge nodded and gestured for him to proceed. Robert methodically walked through everything. He showed the utility bills proving Madison lived at Riverside Gardens the whole time. He played the most damaging parts of the recording where Tyler admitted Marcus was not a licensed attorney, and admitted Madison kept her other apartment. He presented the neighbor statements confirming Madison's real address. He explained how Marcus presented himself as an attorney and made false legal claims to threaten me with illegal eviction. The judge's face got harder and more serious as Robert talked. Tyler's attorney tried to interrupt a few times, but the judge held up his hand and told her to wait. When Robert finished, the judge looked directly at Tyler's attorney. "Do you have anything to say about this?" he asked coldly. She started talking about how her client was misled by bad legal advice from a family member, but the judge cut her off sharply. "The recording makes it abundantly clear that your client knew this individual was not licensed and knew Madison maintained a separate residence. This appears to be a deliberate fraud perpetrated on both this court and the defendant." The judge denied the restraining order request completely and permanently. Then he said he was referring the entire matter to the prosecution office for potential criminal charges. Tyler looked pale and sick as we left the courtroom. His attorney wouldn't even look at him as they walked away. Robert filed our civil lawsuit the very next day. We were suing Tyler, Madison, and Marcus jointly for everything they'd done. The lawsuit was 30 pages long and detailed everything: emotional distress from the trauma they caused, lost wages from my job termination based on their fabricated text messages, costs I incurred fighting their fraudulent eviction attempt, punitive damages for their deliberate, coordinated fraud. Within a week after the lawsuit was filed, I got served with papers at my apartment. A process server handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a settlement offer from Tyler's attorney. They wanted to settle before discovery and depositions happened. Tyler clearly did not want to answer questions under oath or
The next week brought news that changed absolutely everything. Robert called me on a Wednesday morning sounding energized and almost excited. The district attorney's office just filed criminal charges against Marcus, he said. It is official now. He is facing actual criminal prosecution. The charges included fraud, criminal impersonation of a legal professional, and conspiracy to commit illegal eviction. This was not just a slap on the wrist. This was serious criminal prosecution that could result in jail time. Robert explained that this put enormous pressure on Tyler and Madison because they were directly connected to Marcus's criminal case as co-conspirators. 2 days after the criminal charges were filed, I got a call from Daniel, my former coworker, who had helped me find the temp agency work. He had seen something online and wanted to give me a heads up. Madison's employer had found out about the false human resources complaint she filed against me. Someone at my former company must have connected with someone at her company, corporate connections. Her employer launched an internal investigation into whether Madison had fabricated evidence and filed a false harassment complaint to damage someone else's career. The investigation took less than a week. Madison was terminated for serious misconduct and ethics violations. Daniel sent me a screenshot of a LinkedIn post from someone who worked at Madison's company talking about the firing in vague terms. The irony was not lost on me at all. She got me fired with fake evidence, and now she was fired for creating fake evidence. Everything they tried to do to me was coming back on them like karma. 2 weeks before our scheduled court date, Robert called me with more news. Tyler's attorney had sent a revised settlement offer. The new offer was $45,000. They would provide written admissions I could share with specific parties, including my parents and my former employer. Tyler and Madison would both move out of the apartment within 45 days. The only condition was that I could not speak to media about the case. No interviews, no social media posts about the details, no public statements. Robert sat back in his chair and looked at me seriously. "I think you should take this offer," he said. "We have won everything that actually matters. The money is substantial. The written admissions give you what you need to clear your name. Tyler moving out means you keep your home. The media restriction is standard and does not prevent you from telling people in your personal life what happened." He explained that if we went to trial, we might get more money, but we also might get less. Trials were unpredictable. This offer gave me certainty and closure. I thought about it for maybe 5 minutes. Then I told Robert I would accept it. The settlement documents arrived a week later. The written admissions were detailed and completely unambiguous. Marcus was not a licensed attorney and had no authority to make legal claims or threaten eviction. Madison never established legal tenancy at my apartment because she maintained her primary residence elsewhere. The text messages used to get me fired were fabricated and manipulated to make me appear threatening. The entire eviction threat was based on fraudulent legal claims. Every single thing they did to me was admitted in writing and signed by their attorney. I made 5 notarized copies and stored them in different locations where they could never be lost or destroyed. I wrote a long, detailed letter to my parents explaining everything that actually happened. I attached copies of the settlement documents and the written admissions. I mailed it certified mail, so I knew they received it. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my dad, Kevin. "Sweetheart, we are so sorry," he said, and I could hear the guilt heavy in his voice. "We should have believed you. We should have trusted you. Tyler was very convincing, but seeing these legal documents makes it clear that you were telling the truth the whole time." My mom, Rachel, got on the phone and she was actually crying. "I am so sorry for abandoning you when you needed us most," she said through tears. "I should have known better. I should have trusted my own daughter." I did not tell them it was okay because it was not okay. What they did had hurt me deeply, but I told them I appreciated the apology and I was willing to work on rebuilding trust over time.
The relationship was not magically fixed, but at least now they knew the truth. I also contacted my former employer and requested a meeting. I showed up with Robert and copies of the settlement documents. We met with Jennifer and 2 people from Human Resources. Robert presented the written admission that the stalking complaint was completely fabricated. He showed them the settlement documents proving that Madison created false evidence specifically to damage my employment. Then Robert handed them a letter outlining potential legal action if they did not correct my termination record. 5 days later, I got a call from Human Resources. My personnel file had been amended. Instead of showing I was terminated for cause, it now showed I resigned voluntarily. They provided a neutral reference letter confirming my dates of employment and stating I was eligible for rehire. 3 months after the fake attorney ambush that nearly destroyed my entire life, I was still living in my apartment. Tyler and Madison had moved out 2 weeks earlier. The place finally felt like mine again. I used the settlement money to pay down my credit card debt completely. I actually had savings again for the first time in months. My family relationship was slowly healing through weekly phone calls. My employment record was cleared. I learned so many painful lessons through this nightmare. I learned that some people will exploit any weakness they can find. I learned that standing up for yourself, even when you feel completely powerless, is possible. I learned that documentation and evidence matter more than anything else. I learned that there are good people who will help you when you need it most. If I could offer advice to anyone facing a similar situation, it would be this: document everything from the very beginning. Save text messages, emails, bills, receipts, everything. Do not wait until things get bad. Start documenting the moment something feels wrong. Trust your instincts when a situation feels unfair. Speak up early before things escalate out of control. Do not be afraid to seek legal help, even if it seems expensive or scary. Free consultations exist. Payment plans exist. Contingency arrangements exist. You have more options than you think. Do not let people manipulate you with fake legal threats. Verify everything. Real attorneys have licenses you can check online. Real legal documents have specific formats. If something feels wrong about a legal situation, it probably is wrong. Fight back against injustice even when it feels impossible. The system is not perfect, but it does work sometimes. Evidence and truth.
The next week brought news that changed absolutely everything. Robert called me on a Wednesday morning sounding energized and almost excited. The district attorney's office just filed criminal charges against Marcus, he said. It is official now. He is facing actual criminal prosecution. The charges included fraud, criminal impersonation of a legal professional, and conspiracy to commit illegal eviction. This was not just a slap on the wrist. This was serious criminal prosecution that could result in jail time. Robert explained that this put enormous pressure on Tyler and Madison because they were directly connected to Marcus's criminal case as co-conspirators. 2 days after the criminal charges were filed, I got a call from Daniel, my former coworker who had helped me find the temp agency work. He had seen something online and wanted to give me a heads up. Madison's employer had found out about the false human resources complaint she filed against me. Someone at my former company must have connected with someone at her company, corporate connections. Her employer launched an internal investigation into whether Madison had fabricated evidence and filed a false harassment complaint to damage someone else's career. The investigation took less than a week. Madison was terminated for serious misconduct and ethics violations. Daniel sent me a screenshot of a LinkedIn post from someone who worked at Madison's company talking about the firing in vague terms. The irony was not lost on me at all. She got me fired with fake evidence, and now she was fired for creating fake evidence. Everything they tried to do to me was coming back on them like karma. 2 weeks before our scheduled court date, Robert called me with more news. Tyler's attorney had sent a revised settlement offer. The new offer was $45,000. They would provide written admissions I could share with specific parties, including my parents and my former employer.
Tyler and Madison would both move out of the apartment within 45 days. The only condition was that I could not speak to media about the case. No interviews, no social media posts about the details, no public statements. Robert sat back in his chair and looked at me seriously. "I think you should take this offer," he said. "We have won everything that actually matters. The money is substantial. The written admissions give you what you need to clear your name. Tyler moving out means you keep your home. The media restriction is standard and does not prevent you from telling people in your personal life what happened." He explained that if we went to trial, we might get more money, but we also might get less. Trials were unpredictable. This offer gave me certainty and closure. I thought about it for maybe 5 minutes. Then I told Robert I would accept it. The settlement documents arrived a week later. The written admissions were detailed and completely unambiguous. Marcus was not a licensed attorney and had no authority to make legal claims or threaten eviction. Madison never established legal tenancy at my apartment because she maintained her primary residence elsewhere. The text messages used to get me fired were fabricated and manipulated to make me appear threatening. The entire eviction threat was based on fraudulent legal claims. Every single thing they did to me was admitted in writing and signed by their attorney.